My name is Sarah. I'm 32, and for the last 14 years, I've clung to the belief that I built my empire from nothing, a phoenix rising from the ashes of my parents' abandonment. I genuinely thought I was in control, that my past was a closed book. Everything changed during a routine board meeting, a moment so mundane it almost slipped by. Mr. Henderson, a family friend from my childhood, mentioned offhand that my mother had always been so proud of my achievements, even back then, a casual remark about a time she was supposedly estranged from me. Proud? How could she be proud when she hadn't spoken to me in 14 years? The truth hit like a shockwave. Old bank statements, a hidden trust fund, and a series of anonymous tips that weren't anonymous at all. In less than 48 hours, my entire reality crumbled. And my mother, sitting across the table at our family lunch that Sunday, calmly buttering her toast, had no idea her meticulously crafted lie was about to unravel. Before I do, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story earns it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I like knowing who's out there. My name is Sophie Carter. I am 33 years old. And the last time my mother saw me before my sister's wedding, I was 18, wearing my graduation gown beside a metal bench with 50 in my hand. 20 minutes earlier, I thought we were driving home to celebrate. Instead, my mother pulled into the bus station, opened the door, and dropped an old backpack at my feet. Inside were 2 shirts, jeans, a toothbrush, and nothing that suggested I was coming home. She told me it was time to learn how to survive without being carried by the family. My father kept both hands on the steering wheel. My older sister stared through the window and said nothing. I asked where I was supposed to sleep. My mother answered by closing the door. Then the car disappeared into traffic while I wondered how a family could erase someone before the ink on her diploma was dry. I bought the cheapest ticket leaving Raleigh and made one promise. I would never beg them to take me back. For 15 years, they never asked if I survived. Then an invitation arrived for my sister's wedding. They expected the same unwanted girl to appear quietly and pretend the bus station had never happened. But when a black Maybach stopped outside the venue and the driver opened my door, the entrance fell silent. My mother looked at me, then at the building behind me, and her face lost all color. She had no idea what I had survived, what I had built, or why the staff were already walking toward me. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're listening from and what the weather is like there. I want to know how far this story has traveled. The bus carried me southwest through the night, but I barely noticed the towns passing outside the window. I kept my backpack on my lap with both arms wrapped around it, as if someone might steal the only things I owned. Every few minutes, I counted the money again. After buying the ticket and a bottle of water, I had 27 left. I had no relatives in Charlotte, no job waiting for me, and no idea what I would do when the bus arrived. All I knew was that going back was not an option. The station was nearly empty when I stepped off shortly after midnight. I spent my first hour studying motel prices printed on faded advertisements near the ticket counter. Even the cheapest room cost more than everything in my pocket. I was standing beside a vending machine trying not to panic when a woman cleaning the waiting area asked if someone was coming to get me. I lied and said my ride was late. She looked at my graduation gown folded over my arm, then at the broken zipper on my backpack. She did not believe me, but she did not embarrass me either. She wrote an address on the back of an old receipt and told me about a temporary shelter for young women across town. I used almost half my remaining money on a taxi because the city buses had stopped running. The shelter gave me a bed for 30 days, but there were rules. I had to apply for jobs, attend weekly meetings, and be inside before 10 each night. To me, those rules felt like mercy. At least someone was telling me where I was allowed to sleep. 3 days later, I found work at a roadside hotel called the Briar Motor Lodge. The manager hired me to wash towels, strip beds, and clean the breakfast area after guests left. My shift started at 5 in the morning. I earned barely enough to eat, but the kitchen supervisor let me take leftover fruit and unopened cereal cups at the end of the day. I learned to stretch one meal into 2. I washed my uniform in the shelter sink and hung it beside my bed to dry overnight. During breaks, I sat behind the laundry room with a notebook and wrote down every job I saw people doing inside the hotel. Front desk agent, housekeeping supervisor, sales coordinator, revenue manager, general manager. I did not understand half those titles, but they sounded like doors, and I was tired of living as if every door had already been locked. At the public library, I taught myself spreadsheets, basic accounting, and customer service. I watched free training videos about hotel operations because the computers shut down automatically after 1 hour, and I wanted to use every minute. That was where I met Tessa Monroe. She worked evenings at the front desk and came to the library to use the internet because her roommate had stopped paying the cable bill. Tessa was blunt, funny, and completely unimpressed by self-pity. When she learned I was living at a shelter, she did not tilt her head or tell me how sorry she was. She simply said, "You have 2 weeks left there. My roommate is moving out. The apartment is terrible, but the locks work." We became roommates before we became friends. Our apartment had peeling paint, one working burner, and plumbing that complained every time someone took a shower. To me, it was the first place in Charlotte that felt even slightly mine. I slept on a mattress on the floor and kept my 50 graduation card inside my pillowcase. I never spent the final $5 bill. I needed proof that the bus station had really happened, especially on nights when loneliness made me question my own memory. My family did not call. My mother did not ask whether I had found a safe place. My father did not send money. My older sister posted photographs from her college campus, smiling beside our parents beneath a caption about family always supporting one another. My younger brother received a used truck for his birthday. I found out through social media. For months, I told myself their silence no longer mattered. Then I would hear someone in the hotel lobby call her daughter and say, "Let me know when you get home." And the grief would return so quickly, I had to step into the laundry room before anyone saw my face. Anger kept me moving, but work gave that anger direction. I started noticing things the managers ignored. We lost reservations because messages went unanswered. Guests complained because rooms were marked clean before anyone checked them. Employees were blamed for mistakes caused by broken systems. One Friday evening, a convention downtown filled nearly every hotel in the area. Our booking system malfunctioned and sold the same 12 rooms twice. By 7, the lobby was packed with exhausted travelers, and our manager had disappeared into his office. Tessa was being shouted at by 3 guests at once. I stepped behind the desk even though I was not authorized to touch the reservation computer. I called nearby properties, negotiated reduced rates, arranged transportation, and prepared written apologies for every displaced guest. Then I found 2 vacant rooms that had been incorrectly marked for maintenance and had housekeeping inspect them. By midnight, everyone had somewhere to sleep. The manager later warned me never to interfere again, but one woman in the lobby had watched the entire thing without saying a word. She returned the next morning and asked for me by name. I did not know it yet, but she was about to become the first person who saw more in me than the girl someone had left behind. Who would be the first person to trust me with a future I could not yet imagine? Her name was Marisol Vega. She was in her late 50s, wore simple black suits, and spoke with the calm confidence of someone who never needed to prove she belonged in a room. She asked me to sit with her in the breakfast area after my shift. My first thought was that she planned to complain about something I had done the night before. Instead, she asked why I had handled a crisis that was not part of my job. I told her the truth. No one else was doing it, and the guests still needed help. She asked where I had studied hospitality management. I almost laughed. I told her I had studied at the public library between laundry shifts. Marisol did not laugh. She asked me 5 questions about room pricing, staffing, and customer recovery. I answered the ones I knew and admitted when I did not know the others. Before leaving, she handed me a business card and said, "Honesty is easier to train than arrogance. Call me when you are ready to stop working for people who punish initiative." I kept that card for 9 days before calling. I was suspicious of kindness by then. In my experience, help usually arrived with a hidden price. Marisol met me at an old brick inn on the edge of Charlotte. The place had 18 rooms, cracked shutters, and a sign that flickered even during daylight. She had purchased it after retiring from a regional hotel company. The inn was losing money. Reviews were terrible, and 2 previous managers had quit. She offered me a job as her operations assistant. The salary was only slightly better than what I already earned, but the position included a small employee room behind the office. More importantly, she placed a written contract in front of me. The contract listed my hours, pay, housing cost, responsibilities, and the exact conditions under which either of us could end the arrangement. I read every line twice. Marisol waited without rushing me. That was the first lesson she taught me. Real support did not demand blind trust. It allowed questions. I accepted. For the next year, I learned the hotel business from the foundation up. I inspected rooms, balanced receipts, answered complaints, negotiated with laundry suppliers, and tracked which online listings brought actual customers. Marisol taught me that most failing businesses were not destroyed by one dramatic mistake. They were weakened by 100 ignored details. A dripping faucet, a rude greeting, a bill no one checked, a worker who stopped caring because management had stopped listening. Tessa joined us on weekends to take new photographs and rewrite the inn's social media pages. She called herself our unpaid director of making things look less depressing. I insisted Marisol pay her. Tessa accepted $10 an hour and free breakfast. We repainted the rooms ourselves, replaced harsh lighting, partnered with a nearby bakery, and created weekend packages for couples visiting the city. I contacted local wedding planners and offered discounted blocks for small events. Within 6 months, occupancy increased enough for Marisol to hire 2 more employees. She gave me a performance bonus after the first profitable quarter. I stared at the check for so long that she asked whether the amount was wrong. It was not wrong. I simply had never been rewarded for making something better. At home, good work had always become the new minimum. Success did not erase my fear of failure. It made the fear louder. When I created our first holiday promotion, I priced the rooms too low and forgot to include extra cleaning costs. We filled every room and still lost money that weekend. I expected Marisol to fire me. Instead, she placed the financial report between us and asked me to explain what I had missed. I did. She made me create a recovery plan, then trusted me to carry it out. A mistake is expensive, she said. But shame is even more expensive if it teaches you to hide the next one. No adult had ever separated my failure from my worth before. I took night courses in bookkeeping and earned a certificate in hotel revenue management. Tessa helped me practice presentations while eating noodles at our kitchen counter. We began talking about what the inn could become instead of what it had been. 2 years after I arrived, a larger property 10 miles away went into foreclosure. It was a former boarding house with 30 rooms, a neglected garden, and a dining hall with boarded windows. Marisol believed it was too risky. I spent 3 weeks researching the neighborhood, renovation costs, and potential customers. Then I prepared a proposal. I suggested turning the building into a small boutique hotel that combined extended stays with private events. Marisol listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said the plan was strong, but asked how much of my own money I was willing to risk. My savings represented years of missed meals, second-hand clothes, and double shifts. The idea of losing it made my stomach turn. Still, I offered every dollar except a small emergency fund. Marisol agreed to invest the rest, but only if I accepted responsibility for operations and tied part of my compensation to performance. She also offered me a 5 ownership stake that could increase if the property reached specific goals. I read the agreement with shaking hands. 5 would not make me rich. To me, it meant something more important. For the first time in my life, my name would be attached to a place no one could order me to leave without consequence. The renovation took 10 exhausting months. Contractors missed deadlines. Pipes burst behind newly painted walls. A lender threatened to withdraw. I learned to negotiate without apologizing for taking up space. I learned to ask for written confirmation. I learned that confidence was not a feeling. It was the decision to act while doubt was still talking. On opening night, only 9 rooms were booked. I smiled for photographs, then cried alone in the supply room because I thought I had ruined everything. By the end of the first year, the hotel was profitable. On the anniversary of our opening, Marisol handed me an updated ownership document. I had earned another 5. I took it back to my room and placed it beside the old graduation card. One document proved someone had abandoned me with 50. The other proved that abandonment had not decided the value of my future. But could a small ownership share in one struggling hotel really become the foundation of something powerful enough to change my life? The answer came through years of early mornings, delayed paychecks, failed inspections, and decisions that seemed small until they changed everything. I spent 3 years turning our second property into one of the most consistently booked independent hotels in the region. We did not compete with large chains by pretending to be bigger. We competed by remembering people. Staff recorded guest preferences. We purchased food locally. We restored original woodwork instead of replacing it with cheap materials. Travelers recommended us because the hotel felt personal without feeling amateur. Tessa joined full-time as marketing director. She had no advertising degree, but she understood people and refused to write anything that sounded corporate. Marisol taught us to build systems so the company would not collapse whenever one person took a day off. By my 6th year in Charlotte, we had acquired a third property through a partnership. The deal nearly destroyed us. Construction permits were delayed, interest accumulated, and the investor demanded staff cuts. I refused to fire employees for a delay they had not caused. I suspended my salary, sold my share in a small rental property, and arranged temporary work for several employees at our other hotels. I called it remembering what it felt like to be treated as an unnecessary expense. We survived. When the property opened, it earned enough within 18 months to repay the emergency debt. I formed my own company and named it Juniper Row Hospitality because juniper trees could grow in difficult soil without losing their color. Marisol became an advisor and minority investor. Tessa became the first executive I hired. I held the controlling interest, but I learned that ownership gave me authority while leadership determined whether people trusted me with it. Over the next 7 years, Juniper Row acquired neglected inns, historic hotels, and event properties that larger companies considered too complicated. We became known for preserving character while improving operations. I understood damaged places. Restoration did not require pretending damage had never happened. It required strengthening what remained. I bought my first home at 28. The house was modest, but the deed carried my name. On the day I received the keys, I sat on the empty kitchen floor and cried harder than I had at the bus station. At 18, I believed safety was something another person could remove by closing a car door. 10 years later, I understood that safety could be built through knowledge, savings, contracts, and people who honored their word. I attended industry events and spoke about employee housing, ethical renovation, and training workers without college degrees. Each Juniper Row property maintained an emergency fund for employees facing housing problems. Interns were paid. Managers were trained never to use humiliation as motivation. By 33, the company operated 6 boutique hotels, 2 restored event estates, and a property management division. We employed more than 200 people. Our most ambitious acquisition was Hawthorne Estate outside Raleigh. It had a stone chapel, ballroom, guest cottages, and neglected gardens. The location was less than an hour from my childhood home. I almost rejected the project, but Marisol reminded me that avoiding an entire region would still give my past control. We purchased it through a subsidiary and spent 2 years restoring it. Ordinary customers saw only the Hawthorne Estate brand. The property soon became one of the most requested wedding venues in North Carolina. 6 months after opening, a regional magazine published a profile about Juniper Row. It included a photograph of me in the Hawthorne ballroom and briefly mentioned that I had experienced housing insecurity after graduation. 2 days later, Diane Carter sent me a friend request. My mother had not spoken to me in 15 years. Her message contained no apology. Sophie, I always knew you were going to do something special. We are so proud of you. I read those words in my office while employees prepared the ballroom for a charity dinner. They had ignored me when I was hungry. Now they had found me because a magazine had printed my success in glossy color. What did my family really want? And how far would they go to rewrite the past once they realized I no longer needed them? I did not answer my mother's message. 3 days later, my father, Paul Carter, emailed me. He said he thought about me often and believed the family should put old misunderstandings behind us. He called leaving his 18-year-old daughter at a bus station a misunderstanding. My older sister, Sophie Carter, contacted me next. She was getting married in October and wanted me there. Her message sounded warm until she admitted guests might ask why I was missing, and she wanted to avoid awkward questions. The invitation included a photograph of the venue, Hawthorne Estate. I checked her system. Her wedding planner had booked it 8 months earlier. My family had no idea the estate belonged to my company. Tessa looked at the invitation and said the universe was not even trying to be subtle. I told her I would not go. She asked whether staying away would bring peace or simply allow my family to continue telling the story without me. My mother's messages became more frequent. At first, she sent childhood photographs and comments about healing. Then she began asking about the venue. She wondered whether I could arrange a free room upgrade or reduce the remaining balance. Family should support family, she wrote. I stared at that sentence until anger replaced disbelief. Where had that belief been when I had no bed for the night? I replied that the venue would honor the contract and provide no additional discounts. She answered within minutes. You do not have to sound cold. We made you independent, and clearly it worked. That sentence made my decision. I accepted the invitation. I told Hawthorne's general manager that I would attend as a guest and instructed the team to treat Meline's wedding like every other event.
No punishments, no favors.
I would not damage my sister's wedding to settle a score with my mother. A month before the ceremony, my father called. Hearing his voice after 15 years felt unreal. He said my mother made the final decision at the bus station, but he admitted agreeing. He claimed money had been tight, and they believed I needed motivation. I asked whether they were unable to support me or simply preferred spending the money on Meline and my brother Owen. After a long silence, he admitted they had paid Meline's graduate school tuition and placed a down payment on Owen's truck. They had not been facing eviction. My mother believed I was unlikely to succeed and did not want to invest more in me. My father said he assumed I would stay with a friend. I reminded him that he never called a friend, checked on me, or turned the car around. I was wrong, he said. I know, I replied. But regret now does not erase what your silence did. Then, before the wedding, I removed the old graduation card from my office cabinet. Inside, my parents had written, "Good luck out there." On the back, my 18-year-old handwriting recorded the bus fare and the 27 I had left in Charlotte. I placed it in my handbag. I was not planning a performance. I needed something real in case my mother tried to convince me my memory was crueler than the truth. Tessa arranged a Maybach through our executive transportation partner. She reminded me that arriving in one of our company vehicles was not pretending to be someone else. It was arriving as the woman I had become. On the wedding morning, I looked in the mirror and did not see the girl in the graduation gown. I saw a woman who had survived without becoming cruel and built wealth without exploiting anyone. Was I ready to face them? Or had 15 years of silence only delayed a wound about to open again? The Maybach entered Hawthorne Estate shortly before the ceremony. Guests stood near the chapel taking photographs, while staff moved between the cottages and ballroom. My mother stood on the front steps in a silver dress, directing relatives as if the property belonged to her. The driver opened my door. Conversations faded as I stepped onto the stone driveway and looked directly at the woman who had left me beside a metal bench 15 years earlier. Color drained from her face. My father stood behind her holding a program. He looked at me, then lowered his eyes. Meline appeared in the doorway, wearing her wedding dress. "Sophie," she said as if she was not sure I could exist in that setting. I told her she looked beautiful. My mother recovered first. She hurried forward with both arms open, attempting a public embrace before asking whether I wanted one. I stepped aside and offered my hand. She froze, then laughed loudly. "Still independent," she announced. "She has always been that way." Inside the chapel, relatives whispered as I passed. An aunt hugged me and said my mother had told everyone I left after an argument because I wanted freedom. That was the first confirmation that my mother had not merely hidden the truth. She had created a version where I abandoned them. Before the ceremony, Hawthorne's general manager approached. "Welcome back, Miss Carter. Would you like the monthly report sent to your office tomorrow?" My mother heard him. "Your office?"
she asked.
I said we could discuss it later. Meline married beneath the restored stained glass windows. During the reception, a local investor congratulated me on the renovation and introduced me as the founder of Juniper Row Hospitality and owner of Hawthorne Estate. My mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Meline stared at me. "You own this place?" I explained that my company had purchased and restored it. My mother looked around the ballroom, finally understanding that her favorite daughter's wedding was taking place inside an empire built by the child she discarded. Her shock quickly became strategy. She touched my arm and announced that talent ran in the family. She told relatives she had always encouraged me to be fearless. When someone asked why we had not seen each other for 15 years, she said I had been busy with my career. Later, she followed me into the hallway. "Since you own the venue, remove the remaining charges." She said Meline should not have to pay her company. I told her the contract would remain unchanged. She said I could afford it. I replied that having money did not obligate me to give it to people who contacted me only after reading about my business. She accused me of coming to humiliate her. I reminded her that no one else could hear us. "Then why did you come?" She demanded to show us the car. I told her I came because Meline invited me and because I was finished disappearing to protect her version of our family. My father entered, but said nothing. This time his silence did not protect her. It exposed him. I promised Meline I would not disrupt the reception. My mother smiled, but panic had begun to show. When the speeches started, she took the microphone. "People sometimes judge parents for making difficult decisions." She began looking at me. "But a mother knows when her child needs to be pushed into the world." She claimed giving me independence after graduation had been the hardest and most loving choice of her life. Then she gestured toward the estate and said, "My success proved that tough love worked." A few guests began uncertain applause. I watched her turn abandonment into sacrifice and cruelty into generosity. She expected me to remain silent because it was my sister's wedding. Would I protect the celebration by allowing her lie to become the final version of our story? Or would I finally tell the truth? I waited until my mother finished, then asked Meline whether I could say a few words. She hesitated before nodding. I took the microphone and faced my sister. I sincerely wished her a marriage built on honesty, mutual protection, and the courage to speak when silence would be easier. A family could survive hardship and disappointment, I said, but it could not remain healthy when one person's comfort depended on another person's silence. Then I turned toward the guests. Since my mother shared the lesson she believes she taught me, it is fair to explain how she delivered it. I did not shout or describe every hungry night. I gave them facts. I was 18, still wearing my graduation gown. My mother placed a backpack at my feet containing 2 shirts, jeans, and a toothbrush. My parents gave me 50 and drove away from a bus station without arranging housing, work, or a safe adult to receive me. They did not call that night, that week, or for 15 years. They contacted me only after an article identified me as a successful business owner. My mother's smile vanished. She stood and said the family had been under severe financial pressure. I looked at my father. "Is that true?" Every face turned toward him. My mother told him not to answer. For once, he did.
"No," he said.
"We could support Sophie." Diane wanted the money for Meline's tuition and Owen's truck. I agreed. I should not have.
"May."
My mother stared at him as if he had betrayed her. In reality, he had finally stopped helping her betray me. An aunt asked why everyone had been told I ran away. Another relative said my mother claimed I rejected their help. Questions spread through the room. My mother accused everyone of misunderstanding her intentions and insisted I would never have succeeded if she had allowed me to remain comfortable. I removed the graduation card from my handbag. This is what they gave me with the 50. It says, "Good luck out there." On the back, I recorded the bus fare because I was afraid someone would one day tell me it did not happen the way I remembered. She accused me of arriving in a luxury car to punish the family. I told her the Maybach belonged to Hawthorne's transportation service. "The car is not revenge," I said. "The truth is not revenge either. It only feels like revenge when someone has benefited from a lie." Meline began crying. She asked our mother whether she knew I had nowhere to go. My mother tried to avoid the question, then admitted she assumed I would figure something out. Meline asked why she had been told I chose to leave. My mother accused her of taking my side after everything she had done for the wedding. That was the moment her concern for appearances collapsed. Meline wiped her face. "This is my wedding and you will not attack her because she told the truth." My mother began shouting that no one appreciated her sacrifices. When a server approached with water, she knocked the glass from his hand. Hawthorne's general manager reminded her of the conduct policy and offered to escort her to a private room. She demanded that I fire him. I said he was doing his job. When she continued yelling, Meline asked her to leave the ballroom. My father followed her, for the first time. The room did not rearrange itself around my mother's anger. The reception continued. Meline and I stepped onto the terrace. She admitted she had known our mother planned to send me away, but believed I would stay with a friend and return. She had never asked because the answer would have forced her to confront how much she benefited from my absence. Her apology contained no excuses, and she did not demand forgiveness. I told her honesty was a beginning, not a repair. Any relationship between us would depend on what she did after the wedding. My father found me near the doors. He admitted he had been a coward and asked whether I could forgive him. I told him forgiveness was not a door he could ask to enter. It was a process I controlled, and it might never produce the relationship he wanted. My mother refused to speak privately. She sent a message accusing me of destroying the family. I answered once. She would receive no money, favors, or access to my company. She could not use my name or success to promote herself. If she wanted contact, she had to acknowledge what she did without calling it love, offer a direct apology, and attend counseling. Then I blocked her number. I left before the final dance. As the driver opened the Maybach door, I looked back at Hawthorne. 15 years earlier, I watched my family's car disappear and believed being left behind meant I had lost everything. That night, I understood that sometimes the person who leaves with the least is the only one free to build something honest. Back in Charlotte, I did not celebrate my mother's humiliation. The victory was that I had spoken without becoming cruel. I had protected my employees, honored my sister's contract, and refused to purchase acceptance with money. In the following months, Meline entered therapy and contacted me carefully, without demands. My father sent a detailed apology and accepted that I might never respond. My mother told relatives I had become arrogant, but fewer people believed her. Once the truth was visible, maintaining the lie required an audience willing to ignore it. She no longer had one. I expanded a Juniper Row program called First Room. It provided temporary housing, paid job training, financial education, and counseling referrals for young adults abandoned by family or aging out of foster care. Every participant received a contract, fair wages, and a trained mentor. I could not return to the bus station and rescue my 18-year-old self, but I could make sure another young person stepped off a bus and found more than 27 and a locked door. Pain can become ambition, but ambition alone does not heal pain. Healing begins when we stop allowing those who harmed us to define what happened. Boundaries are not cruelty. Accountability is not revenge. Forgiveness does not require restored access. Success has its greatest value when it creates safety, not only for us, but also for people standing where we once stood. My mother abandoned me, believing hardship would either break me or prove her right. She never imagined I would build a life strong enough to survive without her and compassionate enough not to become her. Have you ever rebuilt your life after someone close to you walked away? What boundary helped you reclaim your future? Share your story below, because someone reading it may still be standing at their own bus station waiting to learn that abandonment is not the end of their